Oh, no, don't we look at the wrong
I was looking at finance. No, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah, May 16th.
Yeah, why does it say that?
I don't know.
That's really weird. Maybe they loaded the wrong thing in there.
Oh,
Okay, good, then we work off the paper.
We had a motion and a second, I think. All in favor,
Yes.
say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, letter to Secretary Gwynn. FDOT.
Yes, you have in your package a letter to Secretary Gwynn, District Secretary for FDOT. This was an issue that was brought up at the last committee meeting by our former board member, Bill Johnson, both here and at the board meeting, about how Forward Pinellas has talked about requesting pedestrian overpasses at a particular increment on highway projects that are performed by the DOT. This fits in really well with our track safety initiative, and also how our users access our system. So for an example, with the Harn overpass, which was specifically mentioned by former Councilman Johnson, we surveyed Route 19, which runs along there, and 82% of the people who access Route 19 are doing it on foot. And so those pedestrian overpasses are quite critical to the access to our system. And so staff is recommending that we go ahead and send a letter to Secretary Gwynn supporting the decision and what Forward Pinellas has done in terms of requesting that they continue to look at pedestrian access for every highway project that they do.
Any questions?
Question.
Yeah.
And I'm fully in support of it. Is there a reason why a quarter mile was selected?
That
versus like a
was
third or a half? I mean, obviously, the more it makes for easier access, but it also, overpasses are not inexpensive.
No, we do want to look at access points. The half mile is about a 10-minute walk for like a fully ambulatory person, and in 10 minutes in the heat of the summer in a rainstorm is pretty significant. Thought a quarter mile would be more appropriate to request.
Okay, so no, other than that, there wasn't a determination as far as like how far people are actually walking to get to a stop.
Well, the general idea of where people come from stops is usually a quarter mile, and then a half mile. A half mile is the largest catchment area, and the quarter mile is the most frequent catchment area. So we frequently use those measurements in station area planning.
Okay.
And the preferred, thank you, Madam Chair. The preferred choice is overpass as opposed to underpass, I guess, cost-wise?
I don't think that it matters as much to us, whether it's an overpass or an underpass. We just want people to be able to get there safely.
And what are the timeframes for funding something like this? Letting the contracts, providing the funding, getting things like that done. I mean, we got to start working well in advance, I guess, to get this.
Well, they should be including them in their highway projects.
Yeah.
Really. So that should be, when you consider the cost of highway projects, it's not as much as you think to add it onto a highway project.
Insignificant percentage.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yes.
But retrofitting
Is harder.
pretty
Yeah.
expensive.
Especially if you're going under.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I guess we need a motion to, do we need to take action on this?
Action.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve sending a letter forward to try and expedite the inclusion of overpasses or other means to get customers to bus stops safely.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, information items. Strategic public engagement plan.
So while Bob gets organized, we sort of preface this item with, last year you saw a strategic marketing plan, and the big question was, well, where's the public engagement? And we do a lot of public engagement. We brought a lot of that in-house. The public engagement team has put together this framework of how we approach public engagement in general, and then your next information item, community bus plan, shows how we take that framework and put it into action for a specific project. So Bob's going to go over the general guidance document that he and his team has put together, and then Heather will follow up with the example project.
Mr. Shulman, if you'd like to take a walk or hang out in the break room, he was here yesterday afternoon for track, he just saw it, so.
Multiple times is always a good.
I'll do my best to try to make it as doubly interesting as possible. Good morning. We've come to you with a strategic our path forward, many other plans that we've been working on in the agency. I've got the performance scorecard and a strategic marketing plan. So we're doing the same thing with outreach. And this is the foundation that we build. This is our guiding document for our outreach team as to how we move forward with the rest of the agency to maximize our efficiency with the groups that we work with, as well as our reporting and our documenting, because a lot of what we do is listening. We go out and we listen to the public. We bring the information back. We're giving it to marketing. We're giving it to the planners so that we can maximize how we move forward in our programs, whether it's advertising, marketing, or creating some routes or route changes. So it is a, let's try this again. There we go. A dynamic living document that kind of resides and bridges planning and marketing, because we work back and forth with both of them. And we have brought these services in-house. A lot of what we do, and I'll get into some, you'll see some of the details, such as surveys, onboard surveys. We used to do that with a general services contractor. Problem is, you gotta give them a lot of lead time. If something comes up quickly, they can't do it. Well, they can if you're willing to pay, but we can do it so much more cheaply in-house. And it was just a couple weeks ago, Cindy came to us and said, hey, can you get us a quick survey on the 100X for marketing? So within 2 days, we were out on the 100X getting her data. And this gives us a lot more flexibility. And we like to promote ourselves as national innovators, and it's all about flexibility. If you can't be flexible, you're not going to be an innovator. So it goes hand in hand with them as well. And of course, while we're also out there, before we were doing the 300X and the changes in the 100X, and for most service changes, we're out there surveying the passengers too. So we bring it back, give it to the planning and scheduling team, and say, this is where the needs are, this is what we need to change. So it's a lot of two-way communication, or I know the PR community likes to call it environmental scanning of our many publics. The team exists of myself, Juan Bluvian, our community engagement liaison, Nicole Dufa, our public engagement specialist. We are only 3, which means for the task you will see coming up, we are extremely busy. But it's nice, we get to wear a lot of hats, and it makes it interesting. We have some general baseline duties that we're always working on. We're always going out when we can to schools, we're going out to public events, we're working with senior communities, area agency on aging, etc. We do rider awareness like we've been doing the last 2 weeks for our service change that just started Monday. We start a few weeks in advance working with our customer service representatives, working with our drivers, and then we move on to our passengers, letting them know what the changes are. We also do, as I mentioned, surveys, government relations, community relations. This morning I was actually out at the Central Pinellas Chamber of Commerce talking to them about the changes, our new airport service. We also have our new TD brochure for the TD late shift, and a lot of the business owners really wanted to get that for their second and third shift people. So these are the types of duties we have ongoing. And as I mentioned here, our targets, government, chambers, community groups, civic groups, as many audiences as we can hit, and of course the non-riders as well. The people who will pay taxes and often erroneously say, well, I drive, I don't use PSTA. Well, we're out there giving 40,000 to 50,000 rides a day. If you're on the roads, you're using PSTA. We're keeping a lot of people out of your way. The framework, this plan, and you should have links to it in Granicus, keeps us focused, integrates with our plans, our strategic plans that we have in planning, and strategic plans in marketing, our path forward. It classifies the strategies, tactics, the tools, and the goals, And it helps us with our tracking as well, because when people come up and talk to us, depending upon the venue, it doesn't matter. We bring the information back. Monday, Joe, when we were out at the launch for the 300X, one of our track members, Derek, came up and said, hey, we got an issue with a stop at Pierce and Franklin. So we came right back. I sent it out to some different parties, and we found out what the issue was with the stop at the Pierce and Franklin. And that's been logged, and now that's something we go back and we're looking at the route and say, okay, we'll have the data right there. Our goals, many, we like to listen. We want to go out and gather information for our service changes. Promoting any new initiatives, any new services or changes, we want to make sure that everybody knows that's internal and external. And I've noticed, having been around for a little while, that a lot of agencies are great at external, but they forget about the internal people. And that's something we work very hard at, making sure all our drivers and internal customers know what's going on as well. We would like to get out there face to face. You can market, you can run advertisements, you can do social media, but that still doesn't hit a population of 1 million. And that's just in Pinellas, not counting people coming over from other counties. We want to give them another way to communicate with us face to face. And a lot of times we see people will tell us things face to face. They're not going to necessarily get online or Facebook or call in. Sometimes it's complaints. I get a lot of compliments, and I'm always telling them, hey, send it in, send those in. They will brag about their favorite bus drivers. I'm like, please contact customer service, send it in. They get a commendation for it. So we like to give them a face and someone to chat with. And a lot of the times they will come up with all kinds of questions. Why is this the way it is? We get out there and say, well, actually, this is why. And they'll say, oh, I didn't know that. And that's actually one of the greatest parts. That's a lot of fun when you can help people understand. We like to help show them the value of what transit brings to our community, what PSTA does, and let them know that we are there for them, even if they don't ride, even when they just drive. We work with marketing to develop our strong messaging, and as I mentioned earlier, the whole idea is to be flexible, because things happen very, very quickly. And so we always have our head on a swivel and see what we can do to get out there and make it better and make a better impression in the community. Our key initiatives in this year coming up have been senior and student outreach. And student outreach has really taken a nice step forward with our UPass program. Fortunately, we used to have trouble getting into orientation programs, and now thanks to the UPass, they're always calling us. Come out, help our students, let them know that they can ride, and we're having great success with that. We've been doing the community surveys for our bus plan, and you're going to hear a little more about that from Heather in a bit. That's a very big undertaking. We try to get out and get as many people as we can for these several surveys that will take place during this bus plan to know where do you need to go, when, what do you want out of your transit system. And that is going to keep us very, very busy. Some big upcoming projects. You may have heard about this thing called BRT down along Central Avenue. That's going to be monumental. I mean, and it's good. I was at the Central Pinellas Chambers I mentioned earlier, and people are asking, when is it, where is it? What's going on? What's the latest at? So when we start to ramp up and get out for that, we're going to be really busy. Probably similar to the spring break park and ride service, which kept us going really 100 miles an hour for a few weeks, but it was great. We had buses that were just packed. We had the park and rides that were absolutely packed. Really worked well. It was a really fun thing to be a part of and exciting to see. Especially a lot of the out-of-towners, man, they were loving it. Yeah, Joe.
I wanted to ask about that. We need to make sure that we get the parking lots identified and make sure that people know how to get to the parking lots and where to pick up the bus once they get to the parking lots. Because I think still a lot of people are driving out there because they don't know about it, even though we've got signs and brochures and everything else.
And you're right. And this was the first year we've done it just like this. We're still learning. One of the, I guess it was earlier on, we had augmented staff. We hired staff on the weekends to come out and help us. We had staff out on the beach. We had them at the parking lots, but we had to hire people for holding signs on Court Street as they came in to say, hey, here's the free park and ride this way. And we saw the usage of it just go through the roof. And you're right, if we can, and fortunately, thank God to the city, because they did let us put up these signs around the area, it made a big difference. And then we found out very early on that we needed either one of our staff was out there or a supervisor out at the Marina Cantina for the return trip, because we had our trolleys, we had several of the Jolly trolleys, plus we had a lot of plugs out there, and people would not know where to go. And when you have that many running through with the temporary signage, that's something we want to work on, but it was really difficult. So when you can be there and you're telling people, all right, this one's going to Tarpon Springs, this one's going downtown, this one's not going downtown, made it a lot easier. And it gave us we were doing surveys out there, it gave us a lot of great face-to-face time with these people.
Do we have stuff like at the airport and on Facebook and other media sources to let people know about that?
Yeah, social media, and we've got the big launch next week for the airport. And I'm not exactly sure what the specifics of the airport service, but absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I got a lot of good questions about this morning, and they were eating it up at the chamber as
Cool.
well.
All right.
And then, I'm not going to get into a lot of these, but we have an ever-expanding toolkit which we get to choose from and modify depending upon the task at hand. And that's just a quick overview of our strategic plan. Any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple things. One, first off, you said it last night, you said it again this morning, whether you're on the bus or off the bus, you're using PSTA. I think that's a message that more people in our community need to understand, that PSTA is a part of their everyday, whether they're actually on the bus or not. In talking about the student outreach, which demographic of students are you targeting? I know you said it's in conjunction with the UCAS. Are we talking about just college students?
Oh, no. Typically, it's junior high and up. And we have been invited in by different schools, and we get in with mostly with junior high and high schools. We do a lot of group field trips to show them how to ride and how to use the system. Do a whole lot on what's called Great American Teach-In in the falls. We're there as well. But a lot of these schools, and I'm working with a committee from the Juvenile Welfare Board that's targeting a couple of schools, Lakewood Elementary and Midtown Academy, because a lot of those kids live in TD families and they can get the TD passes. They're right on our couple of our routes. So we're trying to work on a pilot program there to get more of those kids, even though they're elementary, on the bus. They can get on the 4 stop right at the school. As long as their parents are there to put them on, it's not a problem.
If you need help at Midtown, let me know. We're going there next year.
Oh, terrific, absolutely.
Are we also, though, when we talk about using the bus, are we including information about being a safe place?
Yes.
Okay. So
In fact, that same group helped us push it out through Peach Jar. I think it's called Peach Jar, without a fee. They were distributing it throughout the school system, because one of the ladies who sits on the school board, forgive me, I can't remember her name, but they're helping us push that out, and that's a big part of it.
Well, and
Yes.
that may also be an opportunity to get into other elementary schools as a way of communicating that message, and then starting the training process on using the buses. Have we done anything, or is there a plan to do more with Visit Tampa Bay with their website? I've mentioned it to them. Their transportation information about getting around Pinellas County is miserable. It's one page if you can find it.
I'm embarrassed to say this, we have a great partnership with Visit St. Pete Clearwater, but not Tampa Bay. I will.
Well, Visit St. Pete
that.
Clearwater is not necessarily that much better. It'd be nice, so ideally, if as a resident or a visitor, if I go to an event on the things to do, if PSTA's options for getting to that event, including a park and ride or whatever, were included on that or linked back to our pages and whatnot. So that you're not just learning about the event, you're learning how to get there, so we don't need as many signage items along the way.
Yeah, especially with that airport service, because first
Yeah.
time ever. When I came for an interview here almost 14 years ago, I said, they said, we'll send a car to pick you up. I'm like, no, I'll just take a bus. And there was a long pause. I said, well, you can't. And then I was kind of thinking, I flew down here for an interview with a transit system that doesn't go to the airport. Fortunately, everything else is wonderful.
Well, and
No, that's a great idea.
thank you for bringing up the airport, because that's my last mention, is as we're rolling out the Flamingo fairs, and it's encompassing the 5-county area, it would seem that part of the plan should also be advertising to people coming into the area at the airport that they can get this app and get around the entire region, right when they're on their way to baggage claim. So it seems like a natural fit, but otherwise, those are things I've thought about since the last
Yes.
time I heard this meeting.
And I've already had my first plea this morning for more funding so we can run this thing 5 to midnight every day of the week.
Right.
Great, keep
Right.
it
Right.
up.
Thank
Which is
you.
why Brad's not here.
Exactly.
Have we thought about going to St. Pete Clearwater Airport as well? Just
Yes.
saying, we get millions of.
Yeah,
people
it's starting to
going
come in.
there every year.
Yeah.
And that's,
So 52 goes well.
it does,
But
it doesn't
stop.
go
It's
in.
not- Oh, it doesn't. stop.
Yeah, years, and
Yeah.
It's
You
kind of a
have to go to the
legacy.
airport. You couldn't stop it out on the road. you know.
because years ago, we did bring our 79 in there, and I don't remember if we brought the 52 or not, but it was almost a zero ridership stop.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But that was
I
years
mean,
ago.
Yeah.
But the traffic at the airport has really
Oh, yes,
increased
it
in
has.
the last 5
Yeah,
years.
they keep making new parking lots around
Assuming there's airplanes.
But yeah,
there. Yeah.
it is most definitely on the radar.
Yeah.
But thank you, I appreciate you bringing it up.
Just saying.
Anything else? Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, community bus plan.
Good morning.
Morning.
Actually, to your point about the St. Pete Clearwater Airport, that is on our list of things to look at through the bus plan process. Is there a way we can serve that destination?
Sorry, I'm still fine.
It's down there.
I'm sure it is.
I was gonna say, if you make that a little bigger for us, usually it's challenging.
Okay, well, while they're getting that, this is an informational item to update you on our progress on the community bus plan. So the community bus plan allows us to kind of really take a step back and take a hard look at our entire system and how it's functioning for our riders, for our community. By talking with the public and by analyzing a lot of data, we're able to develop recommendations, and we can do that under different funding scenarios for how we might improve our services. The bus plan schedule, as you see here, we're about a third of the way into the bus plan, and we're working on some of that data analysis now. We've started public outreach, and then the goal is to have draft recommendations presented to the public and to you all in the early fall, and then we'll do a whole other round of outreach now that we have, once we have recommendations for people to react to, and then bring to you all final recommendations and an implementation plan in the November-December timeframe. We last did this process 5 years ago. We adopted the last community bus plan in 2013. And so since then, there's been a lot of changes. There's been nationwide ridership decline trends. There's been population increases here in Pinellas County. We've started experimenting with new technologies and with our Uber partnerships. And then we also want to look at what things might possibly change in the years ahead. Things like our first BRT is coming online, and we should have an AV project that, at least a pilot project completed. So we'll do that and look at all those different changes in our environment. The goals of the plan are, or the recommendations coming out of the plan really, are to increase our transit constituency. So this means improving services in such a way that our existing riders can use it for more trips, and then also so that we attract new riders. Improving our competitiveness with other modes of travel, so improving our travel times, frequency, span, and reliability, and then of course building financial sustainability. So we really want to maximize our return on our transit investments, and then while also seeking new partnerships and funding opportunities. As I mentioned before, this process includes a lot of data analysis. We actually collect a lot of data here at PSTA, and so this is an opportunity to really take a deep look at it. You can see the different things here that we're going to be looking at. Right now, actually, as of this morning, I reviewed a draft report of our onboard survey, so that was kind of exciting. And we're looking forward to more analysis on our direct connect and innovative partnerships. The scope includes case studies on system redesigns. This is just a representative sample, but dozens of transit agencies across the country have implemented a redesign of their system in the last few years. You've probably heard about Hearts across the Bay. They've done this to improve the frequency on their core routes where transit really performs best. We, as some of you may recall, had similar recommendations back with our other bus plan, but the public, change is hard, and the public does come out, and so at that time, we were only able to do a couple of the recommendations, and pretty much our system is very similar to what it looked like 5 years ago. So these case studies will allow us to understand how these agencies have accomplished this and what the results are. We know that many of them either didn't have the large ridership declines that other agencies had, or actually saw, some of them have seen ridership increase as a result of these designs. Pulling from what Bob just talked about, we are using a lot of the strategies that he included in our larger public outreach plan. We do pick out the ones that we think are most appropriate for bus plan process, and we reach pretty much all the markets that Bob also discussed. So far, we've been conducting kind of what we call early public outreach. We did the onboard survey. We are out at the transfer centers talking to riders. We have a resource allocation game that gives people 10 fake dollars and asks them to allocate among different improvements so we can get an idea of how people would prioritize the improvements. We also did something we were calling PSTA InReach, and we had focus groups. We actually had 8 focus groups with our operators, with our customer service representatives, to hear what they're seeing and hearing from the public. So that was actually really good information and really interesting, and they appreciated being included in that way. As we get the recommendations, we'll do another large round of outreach. You'll be seeing a website coming out soon. We're co-branding with the MPO's long-range transportation plan, and so we're almost through that process, and once we do, we'll kind of hit with some more materials out into the public. And this outreach schedule fits right in with the overall schedule. It's included all in here as well. Having any kind of recommendations or implementation plans approved in the November-December timeframe would allow us to implement changes in 2019, and then to have those changes or what our new system looks like included in our transit development plan, which will be adopted in September 2019, and also the long-range transportation plan of Board Pinellas, which will be adopted in December of 2019. And this would include any unfunded recommendations that would be part of that needs plan that the MPO develops. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Do we have, thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have any kind of preliminary indications of some of the key things that we need to focus on in terms of reallocating equipment, in terms of increasing, sorry about that, increasing certain methods of, routes, things like that we need to modify or improve upon, like we were just talking about the Clearwater Airport, that kind of thing.
Well, we've started compiling things we're hearing from the public, and things and one of the questions we ask the operators, are there places people would like to go that we don't go now? So we start, looking at that information. We do not have the data analysis on what's kind of called transit propensity, like, where dense places people go and live, and what are the origins and destinations that people are trying to get to and from. That is included in the onboard survey, but we do not have that data yet. We do have data on like what people are using our service for. We actually have it broken down by trolley, connector, express bus, and regular fixed routes. So that's new, that we didn't do that last time. So I think that's going to be some really interesting information. But we will be back presenting to you in the early fall some of that really, really good data. That's when we'll have it kind of all. In July, we have a workshop with the consultants to go through like the comprehensive set of data analysis.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess we'll just have to wait.
All right.
But I'm glad you're interested.
Wait.
I think
Any other questions? Yeah.
when we get towards the end of this, I think we're going to have a discussion about the funding side of it. And we did last time where we had multiple system plans based on different funding scenarios, and we'll have that same discussion near the end of this process, where if we go, how would we reallocate resources in order to have a revenue neutral system that is the best that we can be for our community, and if we wanted to add projects to that, what does it take to add those projects? Because I think, to your point, what do people ask for is they ask for more.
Mm-hmm.
Right. More frequency.
more weekends, more evening, more frequency. More.
Well, and I think the information from the other redesigns in other communities will be interesting. Get some good stuff on there.
It will be. And it's been a couple of years for some of them, so they have some good information.
Madam Chair, I just had a question and a comment. I had written down for the future subjects that just a suggestion for our committee to at least discuss. Making sure that the entire board has sort of an update of what's going on in some of the other cities, because obviously they may be limited by time or something. You may have that information, because you brought it up here because you're saying that first you're going to collect this information and then you're going to see what's in there, and now what do you want to go back to them with, and then get their input on that. So I guess it's not only the input, as you're pointing out, that we may be receiving from them, but information that you have as far as some of what's going on. I wrote down connectors, and I wrote down collectors. What's really happening. We're talking all about that. Everybody's talking about that now. I mean, what's going on with the driverless, not that it has to be driverless, but driverless connectors that are running all over by themselves, collecting in a small area and then delivering to the major bus systems, et cetera. Things like that. So it's cool to hear this, but that input's going to come kind of quick, because you'll be going back out to them in September already. We're already there, right?
It's a pretty fast schedule, but we do have a consultant team helping us on this, so yeah, it's not just our staff.
Yeah, actually, I think it's a good idea to have that presentation sort of separate from the whole maximization thing.
Okay.
Just to make the point that we're not the only ones that are dealing with limited budgets and, endless demands. So how are other communities doing that? Kind of set the stage for what you're hoping to do.
And there is a lot of experimentation happening now with Blue Microtransit, and kind of like we're doing with Direct Connect, and a lot of cities are trying different formats of that idea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One other item that doesn't necessarily have to do with efficiency or frequency or things like that is where do we stand with additional benches and additional shelters, because there's still people standing out in the heat and the rain that we need to have protection for while they're waiting around for a bus, especially if it's only an hourly bus. So those kinds of things, they don't produce income or anything like that, but they are important to enhance the quality of the overall service that we provide.
Yes, and that is one of the things we asked riders as part of that game, is do they feel they need more amenities, and our outreach team is doing a really good job of writing down also which routes people are commenting on, because they definitely want to talk about their route, not just the whole system.
Okay.
Madam Chair, from a planning side, I really didn't know this until just a few months ago, how many shelters or how many places we have for seating and shelters that we have in Pinellas, and then the requirements go all the way back, I think it's the 1964 Civil Rights Act of determining based on different elements, and not only financially but other issues of where they have to be and who's using the route. So it really is very complex, but the number that we have is quite incredible. Does anybody remember how many we have?
It's like 700. We have actual shelters. We have just under 5,000 stops, and so when you look at from a national example, we're over sheltered. But when you look at Sunbelt cities, we're about where we should be.
And then you look at, as someone pointed out, for every shelter we put, that's money. You take the money from here, you put it over to here. Do you want to have more routes, or do you want to have more shelters? And it's like you said, you give them $10 and someone will put some money on the shelter and someone puts some money
It's
on the
an
rest.
important thing to have a comfortable waiting space for your customer. And I think our shelter match program is important and demonstrates that we have great city partners that are willing to take a look at how their cities are constructed and what they look like, and and how they use public transportation, support public transportation. So we've been able to put more shelters out with the same amount of money that we have in our budget by having city partners come and plan and implement those new shelters with us. So we're putting out more shelters than we're replacing because of the shelter match.
And we actually have that on our list as a future meeting subject, is the shelter
Yes,
update.
yes.
That may be another month or two. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And now the budget.
To get Bonnie, as I was saying the numbers, making sure I got the numbers right.
Did you get the numbers right?
Yeah, she's like.
Well, good morning. I'm going to end this wonderful planning meeting. It was very exciting. And I really, Bob, what you said about how, whether you take the bus or not, if the woman said is so, I don't know, it was just so important. When I heard that last night, I said, I don't think anybody who's ever been in a car thought of it that way. They'd have another 47, 50 people around them if it weren't for public transit. So.
We did some math a few years ago, I've got it updated, but we conservatively came out to, when we had a high ridership back 2012, we kept a line of traffic 10 miles long off the road every rush hour. They were bumper to bumper.
Wow. So today I get to talk about budget. We've got our first draft of the budget prepared, and we're going to be working on it over the summer to hone it down for the presentations in September. It's always nice to come before you and say we're in a very strong financial position. We've been able to add to reserves this year as we look to fiscal 18. We'll be adding a little bit more into there to help us going forward with the challenges that we have. And I've been spending time not only on the budget the last couple of months, but I've also been spending some time working with our friends over at T-BARTA.
And thank you very much for doing
Oh,
that.
it's my pleasure to be able to do that, but we're trying to get them to where they're on as well, solid financial footing. So as we develop the budget, the fiscal 18 budget is said and done, but what we do is we look at the forecast, because that becomes the reality during the course of the year. And then we base the budget for next year off the forecast for this year, challenging our divisions as to saying, what are you doing new, what aren't you doing, and making the recommended changes. We take a look at the trends that we see, the long-term projections, which will present to us some challenges as we go forward. And then, of course, I have to come back with some suggested solutions. As we look to 2018, we're going to, at this point in time, have a $792,000 surplus that we will be able to add into reserves to help us with next year's budget. We've been very good stewards this year. I'm very proud of all our divisions here who have been working hard, understanding as we meet every month with Brad, and as we also present to you, we have some challenges, one of which is DART. Over the last 2 years, it's gone up $1.3 million, or about 20%. And we don't have a lot of choice with DART. It's a requirement that we provide. We're pleased to be able to provide it. The expenses related to that are directly related to the number of rides or riders that we have. So we'll be talking about some of the things that we can do to help mitigate that. So as you can see, we are going to have on the middle column here $792,000 to carry forward into the next fiscal year. We are going to need to pull a little bit more from reserves. We're going to pull about $1.7 million at this point to be able to balance the budget. And I think we'll be able to, over the summer, keep working at this. Some of the factors that are really pushing it besides DART is diesel fuel. Diesel fuel has gone up about 37%, which we'll be talking about. And I've got a lot of control over certain bits and pieces, but I don't have control over OPEC. Again, our key factors in looking what... Oh, sure.
A couple of years ago, we were buying fuel through a program to help us mitigate the increases. Are we pretty much through that now, and that's
No.
are we still working with that?
we're still working with that. Matter of fact, about 2 years ago, well, even more than 2 years ago, I'd stand before you and say, well, we can do this, but I have to wait until like September 1st to lock in. What I required, and this is another joint venture with Hart and other entities, and Hart leads the procurement on fuel, so I said, I want the ability to keep going out for the length of the contract you have with your suppliers. So I can lock in today for any time into next year. And I can do it in increments of like 42,000 gallons per month, or half increments at 21,000. So I can do that to be able to lock it in. We did that this year, and our average fuel price is $1.73 of what we budgeted this year. We'll be getting into that a little bit more and seeing how the choices that we've made are really helping us. So, but yes, we can
Okay,
do that.
Thank you.
So as we showed here, our gallon, right now today I've got in the budget $2.30 a gallon. So that's up significantly from where we are today. And salaries and fringes leading at the top end, of course that's our biggest expense. This $3 million for salaries and fringes is within what we've been projecting over our 5-year plans. So let's take a look at each of these. Salaries and benefits. We tried an experiment this year. We cut back 6 operators. As you remember last year when we talked about healthcare, healthcare costs were going up anywhere between 20 to 40%. We got it negotiated down to about 20. So we eliminated operator positions. We knew overtime would go up. We knew we would have savings and fringes. It didn't work as well as we thought. I don't mind saying we tried something and it didn't work. So our operator overtime has gone up significantly. We've also had issues filling positions because we are having people retire at a very rapid rate. At any one given time, James back there may be down 17, 18 operators. HR has been great. Right now, I think there's a class of around 11 that is going through, and we're just doing class after class, trying to keep up with the attrition that is going on. So we are going to restore 4 of those operator positions. That should help us out not only on overtime, even though we'll have some additional health insurance costs related to it, the net effect should be savings.
I had mentioned to Brad last time I met with him about perhaps working with Career Source to have them give us some training funds.
Oh, excellent.
Probably need to just get in touch with the executive director.
Write that one down, Michael. So excellent suggestion, thank you. Yes. And
Quick question.
Sure.
Do we have the ability to have temporary operators?
I think that would probably be difficult because of a lot of training that goes involved to be able to put them on the street, but James has had an excellent idea that we're going to look at, and that is we have drivers who are retiring who may want to work part-time.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
one of our
the temporary operators is very difficult because it's 8 weeks of training. But to Debbie's point, we're looking at, we did have a lot of people who retired earlier in the year. So we'll reach out to them. Maybe they're interested in part-time, 20 hours or less. They already know the routes. They've been behind the wheels. They know our rules. So that might be a way to kind of instantly plug in some help and behind the wheel and kind of keep things moving.
Is there a way to tap into school bus operators?
We do now.
Okay.
But we put them through our full training. So, we get, over-the-road truck drivers, former coach bus drivers, school bus drivers, all sorts of different driving positions. But, they just take a while to put through training.
Okay.
I think school
Good
board
idea,
has an
though.
issue too with.
They do, but we also don't run at exactly the same times too. So
Well,
I wasn't sure if there's also limits in how long
Yes.
combined they can be on the road at any given point. But
Yeah, they-
during the summers, they're up. So there's that's why I was thinking they can fill in
Yeah.
potentially. In
No, I
places
mean, great thinking by you, and we're absolutely just trying to explore all options to keep things moving.
So on the wellness side of it, we're constantly pushing our wellness initiatives. We'll be bringing to the board our health insurance broker this month, and they're coming up with even more innovative ideas to be able to help with this and incentivize people to be healthier and also connect maybe some of that into their HSA accounts. That'll be good. The other thing is we are adding 2 accountants. With the implementation of the Flamingo Fairs, with the addition of helping T-BARTA, and I have to say, my team upstairs in finance is doing a phenomenal job. They're doing things more today than they did, a few years ago, 6 years ago. We're doing more work, but it's because we're making sure everything is as accurate as possible. We're improving on processes, getting more detailed in projects, etc. So we will be getting, I've also budgeted at this point for getting funds in to be able, from T-BARTA, to help support them in our efforts to get them up and running again. So we've got that, and we've also added an analyst in transportation. So we talk about there's a lot of data that goes on over there that we need to, I think, drill down in, but especially in the DART area, to give some help there to ensure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to save costs there while serving our customers. And lastly, we've got 3% merit increases budgeted for the administrative folks, which is a little bit less than we've had in the last couple of years. And we're right now in the middle of negotiations. James has been having several meetings already, and we'll see where that lands. But I'm going to be going in at the next meeting and saying, this is where we are financially, this is what we can do. So fuel is one of the other areas. As I mentioned, we're at $1.73 budgeted this year. We were able to do that, locking in about 2/3 of our fuel that we use. Actually, today, our actual average cost per gallon is $1.8674. So we're above budget. However, we are under budget in our overall budget because we are using hybrid buses more so than we ever have. Henry, with all the maintenance that he's been doing in the fleet group over there, we've been improving our miles per gallon. So next year we'll not only be using the hybrids, but we'll be getting some electrics in. So our choices that we've made have really helped to mitigate some of the impacts that we'll be feeling down the road as, of course, diesel prices fluctuate up and down. So DART, getting back to DART, that is increasing quite a bit. We're going to have a normal contractual increase of about 3%. We've been seeing ridership increases that we expect to see to go up. CareRide has been doing a great job at providing the service compared to where we were when we had several providers. So we've seen a lot of people coming back into the system. We also have the aging population within Pinellas County. So we've got some solutions. One is travel training. We've included within the budget, grant funded about $100,000 for travel training. And with the travel training, you're educating your clientele to be able to how to use the bus versus the paratransit vehicle. And it can be very individualized to the to them and their needs, so that we can really make sure they understand how to use the system. We've got the Sandbox grant that we've received, and that will allow our on-demand service for our DART customers. That will be grant funded, so in the short term, that may help lower our costs as well. Shared rides. Right now, it's a very door-to-door service. So if I'm a DART customer, I call up, it comes to my house, and I go to wherever I'm going and back again. It's not very often that we have multiple people in the van. So we're going to be looking at the contract and maybe coming up with some innovative ways of incentivizing CareRide to put more people in the van if they're going to the same location, like dialysis centers. And we may be able to negotiate and come up with something that will save us money through shared rides. And of course, stricter eligibility, we want to make sure that we are looking at everything and making sure not only are we providing the service, but we're providing whether it's ambulatory or wheelchair service. Question?
Thank you. With regard to the shared rides, what's the number of people that we can put in the typical van, the CareRide
James,
van?
We would probably do
4
seated with 2 additional wheelchair passengers.
Uh-huh.
And the challenge right now is, just with the current practice and the current trend, folks have enjoyed a single ride for so
Right.
long
Right.
that we're going to be meeting with CareRide actually in the next few weeks to kind of challenge ourselves strategically going forward to see how we can bundle up passengers in a more efficient way.
Right.
And the idea behind that is to drive down our costs.
Right. Great, okay, that's really, because I was trying to visualize with wheelchair customers and so on,
Right,
how
some of-
we would fit that, fit multiple people in.
Right, they use a combination of vans and sedans right now. You may have seen some of the Care-Ride Priuses on the road.
Right.
For the ambulatory, and
Mhm.
those can do two, 3 passengers.
Great.
And last year I came to you and I said we were balanced through 2021. We are not only still balanced till 2021, but we have actually significantly improved our position of how much reserves will be left at the end of that year. We've gone from a 1.4 to a 4.5. Two main reasons. One is thank you to the board for allowing us to place the order for hybrid buses for 2019 early, so we didn't pay that increased, about 4 to 5% increase in cost. So we saved a significant amount of money doing that. And we also have an increase in our property tax revenue based on the increased property values. So between those two things, we've improved the position quite a bit. We're still looking at a deficit in 2020, but as you can see, we've brought that down about $5 million.
Mhm.
So again, the decisions we make today have a really good impact on the future. So we know that right now in the budget, we've included the homestead exemption. I'm assuming the worst, based on what the voters have done in the past, so we've already included that. We've talked about some of the solutions related to DART and diesel fuel with the choices that we're making. And you've heard the great presentation by Heather today on the community bus plan. With the community bus plan, we're also looking not only at long-term, but short-term solutions. As Heather said, we may be able to make some changes within 2019 based on what we find today. So are there any questions?
My biggest question is, are we factoring in the implementation of additional electric buses, which would totally save us on fuel costs?
We are.
There are a number of people on the board that, are looking at the purchase price as opposed to the overall operational cost, and we need to make sure that we have good data to show why electric buses will dramatically enhance our financial position.
Absolutely. There's a new line in the budget this year for traction power. I think that's what we're calling it. Or,
What's it called?
I don't know, what are we calling
Propulsion,
it?
I think.
Propulsion power?
Propulsion
I think I've been with
power.
light rail too long. But
That's a
with
good
power
buzzword.
for that, so it's a significant savings for us.
Okay, all right, so that will hopefully help us down the way.
Oh, Michael said I had one more slide. I think we talked about all of that. But we've,
Haven't been moving these, so maybe not.
I think we've talked about everything in there, and you just brought up the last point, new mobility paradigm. We're going to be having not only more electric vehicles, and we're going through the pilot period once these vehicles are received this year, but we also could be having the autonomous vehicles, getting back to Heather's point of having a spine and connectors coming into it.
Okay, good.
So good news. It's about as good news story as we can have given the challenges that are out there, so I'm proud of the team.
Yep.
Well, interestingly, at our commission meeting the other day, we were hearing about what happens when the homestead passes, but what about the other one that takes the cap off the Save Our Homes, not exactly, Save Our Businesses cap.
Save our business, yeah.
And the way we were looking at it almost evened itself out. If that doesn't pass, if that doesn't pass, then you almost, I'm totally confused. Then you almost make up the difference for the homestead exemption. I mean, unfortunately, we're shifting all the costs to the businesses and renters again.
Yeah.
But there is maybe a light there if that doesn't pass. And I suspect there's gonna be so many amendments on the ballot that I think maybe the homestead exemption is gonna be the only one that passes.
Is it totally against our operating rules that we can't do an education thing, much like what the Pinellas County Property Appraiser's Office is doing, where we educate people that it's not really in their best interest to pass that? amendment?
We can do that. We could also, the property appraiser's office has a lovely link in there. You can go in and put in and see what the impact is to you.
Right, yeah, but I'll have people
Well,
that
they've
know
been
about
working
that.
on
Right.
this.
Yeah,
They've
that-
been
Or
working
maybe
with
we can
our
link something
Yeah.
from our
Yeah.
website.
marketing department about
Yeah,
putting some materials out, and we'd love to
Yeah.
share them.
yeah.
So I guess the question, Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I may,
please.
if I go-
No,
go on the
that's
red
fine,
line.
I just,
It's about advocating,
Yeah.
are we
Right.
advocating,
And
or are we
educating.
educating? So
Educating.
in this
We're
case,
not
we're
advocating.
educating,
We have
but
to be careful
we can't
how we handle
advocate, can we,
Right.
from
No.
the PSTA?
We can't say vote against.
No, this is just what it means for us.
Right.
Pass, this is what it means. Fail, this is what
Right.
it means.
And actually, I've seen now several times, Mr. Twitty's presentation, he doesn't have in his presentation the impact on public transportation.
Right.
So,
Right, this is true.
Absolutely.
yeah.
We should come up with something
Yeah.
that that we can put in
Yeah.
there, actually.
Educating.
Yeah.
Educating.
I mean, I know our marketing department would be glad to. do that.
Okay.
We have a contact
Yeah.
here.
We don't have a lot of time, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Cindy's-
It's
Well, they
just
can
coming
turn
up.
that stuff around, we're doing
I
it
know.
in-house, so
Yeah.
they turn it around.
Yeah.
pretty
Cindy will
quick.
call and
Okay, good.
get their,
Okay.
make sure the information gets in, and
Barbara,
then,
Yeah,
and then
okay. But we
we'll
only
just,
have
we would, it,
4 or 5
I think it would
months.
be better to use one piece of information.
Oh,
than-
yeah. And it kind of covers the.
Yes, the entire
I
county.
think that's good for the county and for all the municipalities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it does include, I think what they showed us the other day does include all the municipalities and what they are losing.
Mhm.
What was the name of the person you recommended?
Barbara Hernandez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
So as the municipalities inform their folks, okay, or educate their folks, then that part of it comes into that side as well, so it goes there.
And we got these flyers that we
Yeah.
could print a million of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But we
Sure,
got
everybody gets
busy
one.
like 4 months,
Yeah.
5 months to
Right,
get
right.
this word out there and educate people. So,
Yes.
Are there any other questions now that I've got my last slide up there?
yeah. No, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, future meeting subject. More budget. Maybe bus
Well,
plan.
yeah.
What happened this morning?
Yeah.
Yes, so Brad is at the Tourist Development Council with Blanton, talking about some of the candidate projects that we've talked about here, and so we'll get some more information about how those funds can be used and what the process might be for us to advance one or more of the projects that we had recommended forward. Some other things that we'll be talking about in the future is PSTA's support to T-BARTA. There'll be a meeting here on Friday for T-BARTA. It's an emergency meeting, and I think Debbie's staff stepping up, plus the departure of the executive director. The planning department here will also
Mhm.
be stepping up to help with the regional TDP, and so we'll be working with the staff, and so you'll
What
be
time is
hearing
that
about
meeting?
that. 9:30 here, I believe, in the auditorium. Yes, we also have the 300X event
Mhm.
at the airport
Mhm.
on Monday,
Right.
9:15, I think it is that right? And if you'd like to ride over with us, we'll be here at 8 or 8:15.
Okay.
Going over. We'll also be supporting the Pride Parade
Mhm. Right.
this weekend, so.
And also, Michael did a good presentation at the Finance Committee meeting on the Flamingo app and how that's coming along. So,
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
All righty.
Yeah, posted.
These for us? Or these- these
I
stay
have
here?
to go.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've already.
Probably have Rachel put it online.
I just wanted to make sure that it was the same person.